It's the middle of August and it's approximately 7,000 degrees in Texas right now. But apparently Summerween is the new thing, so I spent last weekend reading through the 2025 Scared Sexy Novella collection. Amazon has put out a bunch of these themed novella collections over the years, and I've previously read one of their Christmas collections. I was thoroughly underwhelmed by that one, but that doesn't mean they're all bad, right? Right? According to Amazon, the Scared Sexy stories are equal parts spooky and swoon-worthy. And since I like both of those things, I figured it would be a great time to give these a shot and see if they're gonna live up to that promise. After the Christmas collection, I don't have a lot of hope, but hey, let's read them and see. Hi, my name is Sid, and welcome back to my very cluttered little corner of the bookish internet where I don't let the weather, the calendar, or how low we have the AC on tell me what to read. Today, I'm going to be reviewing all 6 of the novellas in the Scared Sexy collection, and there are going to be some spoilers throughout this video, so just keep that in mind if you're wanting any potential jump scares to remain a surprise. First up out of this collection, I tried My Boyfriends Are All Monsters by Kimberly Lemming. I didn't recognize this author at first, and I thought that maybe she was new to me, but after a little bit of Googling and research, I realized that I have read her books previously and have just really not meshed well with her writing style. I was absolutely more than willing to give her another go, but I haven't successfully made it through one of her books yet. I DNF'd both that time I got drunk and saved a demon and that time I got drunk and needed a love potion at a werewolf. And honestly, that really hurt my own feelings because I wanted to love them so much. The covers were so cute and the premises sound so funny, but it just didn't work for me. So I did start this novella with a little bit of apprehension. My issue with her longer books was that they just have these really cool, prominent fantasy settings, but the characters all speak with the snark and swagger of a millennial barista. And I know that a lot of people love that vibe, but it's just never really worked for me. I enjoy fantasy books better when the characters speak in a more fantasy-based dialect, and I just can't pull in the modern language. But the good news is that this novella does fix that issue for me because it is centered around Lucy, who is a normal 20-something-year-old who lives in the modern day, and she is staggeringly bad at being in nature. As an attempt to spend time with her boyfriend, she's out on a mountain hiking trail with him and his friends. The group gets tired of constantly having to wait on her to catch up with them, and the boyfriend seems to just want to hang out with another girl in the group anyway. So they all suggest that she take a break and hike the rest of the way to the summit where they'll be camping on her own at her own slower pace while they go on ahead without her. She gets really pissed off at this suggestion because that's just so stupid. And instead of following them, she decides to try to get back to civilization by herself. Honestly, this is one of the most realistic scenarios I've ever read because seriously, screw hiking up mountains with ungrateful boys and homewreckers. The story takes a monstrous turn when Lucy finds a well and makes a wish for true love, inadvertently summoning the ancient god that lives at the bottom. The problem started for me when the god creature creates a whole ass weird town for Lucy, complete with sifting through his collection of romance novels to create all of these heroes to follow her around and worship her. It really creeps her out because they help her get to this town and then they randomly vanish and reappear with no explanation. Then when she finally discovers what's going on and tells the god to knock it off with these weird romance cover guys, she asks him to transform into a tentacled kraken instead. I love a good monster romance, but this novella was neither spooky nor swoon-worthy for me, and by 75% of a very short story, I was just so bored and so ready for it to be over. There's a lot of interactions with her friends. They're calling her and they're texting her, and I know that these interactions are supposed to be very funny, but the humor just fell so flat for me. Even when Lucy grabs her Kindle and requests more monsters join the first one. She gets a vampire and a demon with a pierced tongue. It just didn't pick up for me. I would still likely try another book by this author if it wasn't set in a fantasy universe, but overall, I just found this novella to be fairly skippable. I didn't really like the spice, and the humor just didn't do it for me. Next up, I read Hot for Slayer by Ali Hazelwood. I did initially decide to pick this up as part of my ongoing Ali Hazelwood challenge, but I wanted to read the others in this collection anyway. Turns out that even if the rest of this collection is a complete bust, this one novella made it all worth it. I loved this. I haven't finished my read-through of all of Ali's books yet, but I'm starting to suspect that she really shines for me when she's writing in a paranormal setting. Hot for Slayer is the story of Ethelthryth, who was turned into a vampire sometime in the 1600s. Not long after, her personal vampire slayer Laszlo was also created with the sole purpose of eliminating her entire bloodline. Fast forward a few centuries, and they've been dancing around each other for years with a toxicity usually limited to poison dart frogs. Up until one day, when she's caught up in a bad situation and Laszlo comes striding in to save the day, only he's knocked unconscious and develops total memory loss. In less than 100 pages, we get a lot of the Ali Hazelwood top hits. It's enemies to lovers, there's just one couch, there's a fake proposal, he's the size of a Dodge Ram, and she's had no idea that for hundreds of years he has had sparklers in his eyes for just her. But holy crap, all of those ingredients tossed together with amnesia and mortal enemies just worked for me. I love the different take on vampire lore, and the humor and the banter was so good. Ethel is so awkward while Laszlo is got amnesia, and it's just funny. And I actually wish this story was just longer. But not because I thought that it wasn't complete on its own. I just was greedy and I want more of these characters and more of their love story and seeing them just interact. I would have loved to have seen more of their history and gotten a little more of the lore of this world, because a vampire slayer created to eliminate an entire vampiric line is something really fresh and new to me, and I would have liked more exploration there. But again, that's just because I'm greedy, and the story was good enough on its own. I just wanted more. My only slight quibble was, again, Ethel talks and thinks very similar to Ali's STEM characters. Like she's a millennial kid instead of someone who grew up in the 16th century, but maybe she's just really good at adapting by this point. So, did Hot for Slayer live up to the spooky and swoon-worthy promise? It wasn't really spooky, but just one couch? Absolutely swoon-worthy. So after that, I went straight into Space Vampire by Ruby Dixon. I love Ruby Dixon, and I have read short stories from her before that have really worked for me. Allow me to name drop the Half-Orc's Maiden Bride and the Sea Ogre's Eager Bride. Chef's kiss, no notes. But I don't think those books were this short, and I feel like this particular story just needed a little more time and a few more pages to just really come together. Space Vampire is about our FMC Dana, who is a human who was previously abducted from Earth, and she's currently existing on an alien space station as the kept pet to the lead scientist. The space station is producing clones designed to be gladiators, and they've been tinkering with the genetics to produce very strong and fast-healing fighters for the gladiator rings. Something has gone really wrong with their latest clone, though, and Dana has woken up from a nap in a hidey hole to find that she's been abandoned on a space station with a monster killer. This clone has unexpectedly developed a need to drink blood in order to survive, hence the whole space vampire thing. As Dana is trying to figure out what's going on, she's tiptoeing over all these bodies, and there's intermittent power outages because everyone has taken the emergency pods and just dipped. Dana figures that she really doesn't have anything to lose here, though, and she ends up befriending the monster. She decides to name him Vlad, as you do. And after establishing that he won't eat her, she includes him on her plot to attempt to escape the space station in the one leftover escape pod. With this one, I did really enjoy the story, but I'm back to feeling like it was just too short for them to truly develop much chemistry. It did ultimately have a really good spice scene. Ruby is truly the queen of monster spice, but I just wanted more from Dana and Vlad. More time with them in general, but definitely more time to develop them as a couple. And Dana finds Vlad fairly quickly in the story, and just as quickly we've established that he's not going to eat Dana, or at least not without permission and not to kill her. Space Vampire definitely had the potential to live up to the promised spooky factor. The abandoned space station, some random power outages, and an unknown monster lurking in the shadows really could have packed a punch, but it just didn't have enough time to develop any real tension for me. But I will say, it absolutely gave us sexy. And after Space Vampire, I picked up Falling by Christina Lauren. I was really excited for this one. Earlier this year, I read Tangled Up in You, also by Christina Lauren, and I had such a good time. I was really happy to be trying another one of their stories. In Falling, we have the story of Kat, who's been dragged to a Halloween party by a guy she's about to break up with. Jake is great. He just has this tendency to forget about her a lot. And true to form tonight, he forgot all about the couple's costume they'd planned, which makes her feel even more out of place and lonely. Once they're at the party surrounded by all of his friends, Jake briefly introduces her to a few people and then just completely disappears, leaving her alone in a sea of strangers. This is the final straw for Kat. She's just had enough. She sends a breakup text to Jake and she starts to head out, but it turns out she's caught the attention of a mysterious stranger, an ancient being trapped with a terrible curse. Briggan is a fallen who's been alive for centuries, feeding on pleasure since he can't experience it himself because of the aforementioned curse. And that's my first issue with this. In a spooky novella collection, a cursed ancient being sounds like it should fit right in, but in execution, he felt much more paranormal romancy rather than spooky Halloweeny. He keeps trying to thrall Kat to do his bidding and is amazed that she isn't affected by him at all. She can kind of hear him in her mind, but she just thinks that she's going nuts. My second issue with this novella comes when they finally meet. Briggan explains how he became a fallen and tells Kat that he believes she's his reincarnated murdered wife, and his explanation just didn't really make a lot of sense to me. And my third okay, I have a lot of issues for such a small word count, is that Briggan is supposedly out here looking for his lost mate that's been reincarnated and will come back to him eventually. But while he waits, he's just out here knocking boots with any lady he can thrall. Only his one true love will actually see him for what he is, a creature with wings, and he's just waiting around having sexy times, I guess. I mean, that's kind of explained because he has to have pleasure to feed, but he's also immortal, so it took me a while to even warm up to either of these characters, and once I did, it was just boom, the novella's over. This one definitely could have benefited from being a longer story or having some elements removed. Falling apparently decided centuries of supernatural lore, plus cursed immortal, plus reincarnated murdered soulmate, plus mind control, plus relationships development, and spice could all fit into this tiny little sandwich bag, and it was just too much. So was it spooky? Not really. Was it swoon-worthy? Not really. There is a pretty detailed spice scene, but something about the whole situation with the mind control just felt off. We didn't even really get a happily ever after type ending. It just felt like a one night stand with extra steps, and it just didn't do it for me. This one fell under the category of pretty skippable. So after the disappointing experience with Falling, I grabbed Beautiful Nightmare by Katee Robert. I've never read anything by Katee before, but my aunt really enjoys her books, so I had some high hopes for this one. But unfortunately, this turned out to be Monsters Inc., but make it horny. Gemma is a demon who's been training to work as a sleep paralysis demon. As with the aforementioned kids movie, demons in this world feed on fear and a few other emotions. You know what I mean. She's really awful at her job, and she's been in training for far longer than she's supposed to be, but she's finally been assigned her first solo job. She has to succeed here, otherwise she'll either starve to death or worse, disappear. Once she's successful at this, she'll be assigned to many humans to keep in a constant fear rotation, but for right now, she's responsible for just one. With trepidation and nerves aflutter, she approaches her very first solo sleeping human, Caleb, and starts to wind up her spells. She casts one to paralyze him, and then wakes him up to freak him out good and proper and have a nice meal, only to discover he isn't scared at all. He is really turned on. Her pink skin, purple hair, and, complete nudity are really doing it for him, and she just can't make it stop no matter what she tries to do to scare him. Even the paralysis seems like it is turning him on. Eventually, she transforms herself into her mentor's visage, which is a huge no-no, but very effective in terms of terror. Once she gets what she came for, she flees back to the demon world in a puddle of shame. But since she's arrived back fully fed on fear, everyone thinks she's had a very successful scaring. She is chastised a bit for taking on the mentor's face, but overall, everyone is really impressed by her first outing. She doesn't let on that they are so wrong. I feel like this could have gone in a few different ways. It really could have leaned into the humor of this situation and been more rom-com-y, or it really could have been the perfect setup for this weird as hell BDSM story, since this guy clearly likes some restraint. But it didn't really do either of those things. Caleb is completely enthralled by Gemma, and yeah, okay. He really wants all the sexy times he can get with her. But he also wants to talk with her and tell her about his day and take her out on dates. He wants a relationship with this pink-skinned fear demon. Jenna, meanwhile, is still determined to scare the absolute living hell out of him so she can feed properly and not bring dishonor on her demon house. On Gemma's next encounter with Caleb, he's still completely turned on by her presence, even though she added clothes this time, y'all. And this turns out to be their big spicy scene. This lusty encounter feeds her way better than the fear ever did, but when she gets back to the demon world, everyone can tell she just added a little spice to her life, and apparently this is just one failure too many for the vague higher-ups in this weird bureaucratic world, and she's banished. Just kicked out the door, just like that. Only, whoops, no, that whole disappearing thing, that's just when failure demons are angels now. Gemma is told that angels do the exact same thing that demons do, but relationships with humans are actually encouraged. Feeding on lust is great, and she'll only ever be assigned a max of 3 humans and not have this whole, zoo of them. And I'm reading this and I'm over here just like, what? Excuse me, what? So, they're trying to give us a happily ever after, I guess. But what confuses me is the book keeps saying that Gemma needs this fear or this lust to survive, but also refers to it as a job. Is the extra fear lust being used somewhere? Is she getting a paycheck with the sustenance? Are they giving her insurance? Will she actually be able to be an angel and settle down with Caleb too? Those things are never clarified, and the whole job situation makes the romance feel a little icky. Especially with the angel specification that she'll likely be assigned 2 more humans someday. With the information we're currently given, it's not a loving romance story to me. And I have so many questions, and they're never gonna get answered. So, did it live up to the spooky, swoony promise from Amazon? Not really. It could have. The ingredients were all there for spooky, but at the end of the day, Gemma was just too awkward and Caleb was just too horny for it to really pack a scary punch. And Swoon sort of failed for me too, with all the mentions of how this is just her job. I just didn't buy the romance. So finally, we have arrived at the sixth novella, which is Spicy Little Curses by J.T. Geissinger, and I hope I am pronouncing that correctly. This last novella starts out really promising with a cool premise. Petra is a journalist, and her employer wants her to do an article on New Orleans urban legends for Halloween. Already, I feel like we're in the perfect city for a Halloween story. New Orleans is full of haunted history and spooky locations, and the author really has a lot to work with here. This is exciting. Petra is a natural-born skeptic, so she really doesn't expect to find much when she heads out to do research for the article, but sources keep leading her back to a tattoo shop with a proprietor who specializes in tattoos that repel evil spirits. The rumors keep popping up that the artist also has tattoos that he was born with instead of inked on. And Petra really thinks this is just total bullshit, but she doesn't have anything better to investigate anyway, so she heads out to see what's up. And she meets our MMC Dax. From the first moment she meets Dax, something is just really off. His shop is really dark and creepy, and she could swear she saw some of his tattoos move. But he wants nothing to do with her and keeps insisting that she needs to leave immediately. Of course, she ignores him and grabs him by the wrist to get his attention, and she gets a sharp zap when she touches him. Fortunately, she doesn't notice that where her hand was, her name is suddenly inked into his skin. Unfortunately, it turns out that Dax is affected by a centuries-old curse that has been passed down for generations. Any woman that falls in love with the men in his family are killed by a creature called the Hollow Man, and now it's coming for Petra. Her name suddenly being inked into his skin signals that they are soulmates, and that's bad news bears for Petra. And this thing is coming for her fast. Most of the women in his family have had years before the Hollow Man shows up. Petra has had hours, and she's never even met Dax before. Out of all of the novellas in this collection, this one passes the creepy vibes check the most. The New Orleans setting, combined with descriptions of a creepy hotel room, a vibrant masquerade ball, and some spooky catacombs, cement this pretty firmly in Halloween territory. And Petra is being chased by the absolutely creepy Hollow Man, and he comes complete with this strong scent of decay and death and just awful. It's just nasty. I enjoyed this a lot more than I thought I would because I did have a little bit of an issue getting into it during the first chapter. I absolutely hated the nicknames they had for each other, but at the end, I really wish it had been longer. But, I mean, that's my critique with all novellas, pretty much. It was such an interesting plotline that I thought it could have made a really cool, longer novel, but short and sweet. The author did leave this fairly open-ended, though. Petra sensed that there was something else out there after the Hollow Man has been eliminated, so maybe we'll get another novella at some point. My only quibble is that I really wish published books would leave TikTok speak on TikTok. Petra uses the word unalive at one point, and I hate it. So for our last entry in this video, we definitely got some spooks, and it was also pretty steamy in parts, so I think this one really understood the assignment. So did Scared Sexy live up to Amazon's promise of equal parts spooky and swoon-worthy? It was kind of a mixed pumpkin of Halloween treats for me. Hot for Slayer was absolutely the full-size candy bar your grandma gives you for sure. Space Vampire and Spicy Little Curses were also worth reaching into the bucket for. But the other three, they were just honestly a little bit skippable, and I could have done well without reading them. I didn't rate them very highly on my Goodreads. Thank you so much for hanging out with me while I rambled about these novellas. And if you've read them, let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you have recommendations for books for this upcoming spooky season, I am still looking for my 5-star horror book. So that is a challenge for Halloween this year. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!